Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity in the heart of Austin. We're here at Casa de Luz in Austin, Texas, and hello to everyone on Zoom as well. My name is Teresa Atia, and I will be your platform leader for this morning's service. Our lesson today is going to be brought to us by Rick Busby, L.U.T. He's here for our lesson. We're going to start with an opening prayer. So, Rick, you want to come up first?
So let's all just take a deep centering breath or two. Just bring ourselves into this sweet space, into this sanctuary that we are creating together, where we know that the one power, the one presence is active right here, right now with us, in us, and through us. There is no separation between us and the divine. In fact, we are children of the divine, created as co-creators of this experience. And so as we come together this morning in community, we open our hearts, our minds to the spirit of truth, to the spirit and the energy of love, and ultimately to the activity of forgiveness in our lives. We bring our willingness to the table this morning. We open ourselves up for the Holy Spirit to work through us and in us in our lives, to show us the opportunities that are available to us to release and forgive and to experience peace more of the time in our lives. For the love that inspires the miracles and for the peace that is the consequence of that action of love, we say thank you. Thank you, living, loving Spirit. We pray all of this and more in the name and the nature of the indwelling Christ. And so it is, and so we allow it to be. Amen.
Amen.
Now it's time for us to gather for our affirmations. And we use affirmations as a tool to create our reality. So we're first going to affirm our prosperity, and we'll say together, God is my instant, constant, abundant source of supply. I am blessed with health, wealth, happiness, wisdom, love, and success. Right. And now we're going to affirm our vision for our spiritual community. And so we'll say it together. With our thoughts, words, and actions, we make a powerful and positive difference in Austin, Texas, and in our world. Okay.
So good morning, everyone.
Hi,
Good morning.
Rick.
Welcome to Unity in the Heart of Austin this morning. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you all this morning. This morning's talk is under the title of The Art of Forgiveness. For those of y'all that have seen me speak over the course of time, you know that no matter what I'm talking about, forgiveness is kind of part of almost every talk. And part of the reason why that is because of lesson 62 in A Course in Miracles. And I want to read a couple of the opening paragraphs here of this thing. Lesson 61, which comes right before this, was also a big one for me. You know, some of y'all might have heard me tell this story before. I've told it on a few occasions. But lesson 61, the affirmation, the lesson in lesson 61 of A Course in Miracles is, I am the light of the world. That's the lesson. That's the affirmation. For those of you all who done A Course in Miracles or study that and everything, this comes from the lessons, not the text. And it's sort of getting us, you know, you do those daily lessons and you're moving forward. It's kind of chipping away at all of our normal defenses and everything and trying to get us to that place of revealing what is really true and authentic, you know, within us. And one of those ideas, one of those divine ideas is that I am the light of the world. You are the light of the world. Each one of us should be able to claim that for ourselves. I can tell you that the first time I came across it, which was in the late 90s when I first started studying A Course in Miracles, and I came across this lesson. And as you read the lesson, you know, at the end of it, it'll give you a little suggestion of something that you can do to practice whatever the daily lesson is during the course of your day. And it doesn't ask much of you. It only asks for a minute or two of your time. But as you think about it during the course of the day, just to give that minute, it's the same thing for us in Unity as taking time out in silence. How many people take time out for the silence once a day? How many people take?
I just started this week, I have to say.
Just this week? Good. Making progress.
I'm starting today.
Making
7
progress.
times, I've done it 7
Making
times.
progress. We're making
Yes.
progress. How many people take multiple times in the silence during the course of the day? So yeah, that's a different thing. Like we tend to take that time where we set aside, whether it may be, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, we go into meditation or we go into the silence and we enter into that. Of course, the miracles would have me take that same idea and attempt during the course of my day to do it multiple times, like take a little 1 minute or 2 minute break and practice that daily lesson. And so the first time I came across the I am the light of the world portion, and I was like, okay, I was a pretty willing student by this point in time. I'm 60 lessons into it. I'm practicing, right? So it's like, okay. I am the light of the world. And I remember the first time I said that, I was just like, I am the light of the world. In that space after I'd said it, that silence, I was like, if I am the light of the world, we're in trouble. In trouble. Because at the time that I was practicing this and coming to these concepts and everything, I didn't yet believe that. I was still kind of mired in my own dark night of the soul kind of experience, and I'm unwinding past beliefs, trying to just get to a place of neutrality where new ideas could come in. And that idea about being the light of the world wasn't the first time I'd ever heard it in my life, but it was the first time I'd ever attempted to affirm it and like, what does that feel like, right? So going on from that, the very next lesson, lesson 62, the affirmation is this: forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. Forgiveness is my function. That's my primary activity during the course of the day. That if I want to demonstrate and express being the light of the world, then I need to practice forgiveness. That's my basic function. It's like, chopping wood and carrying water, wax on, wax off. It's what we practice. We practice forgiveness. So I want to read these first couple of paragraphs here to kind of get some ideas in here about the way the Course in Miracles is doing, and then we'll kind of backtrack and work towards it. So this is, once again, this comes from lesson 62, Course in Miracles, forgiveness is my function as the light of the world, is the affirmation for the day. It is your forgiveness that will bring the world of darkness to the light. It is your forgiveness that lets you recognize the light in which you see. Forgiveness is the demonstration that you are the light of the world. So when we practice forgiveness, that's how we can begin to express the light of the world that we're intended to be. Through your forgiveness, does the truth about yourself return to your memory. Therefore, in your forgiveness lies your salvation. How many of us were taught that our salvation is something outside of us, right? Jesus saves, or whatever the case may be, some external source, being, whatever the case may be, was what we needed to pledge allegiance to, so to speak, in order to be saved. This is telling me that it's my forgiveness that is the demonstration of that. Through my forgiveness, does the truth about yourself return to your memory? Therefore, in your forgiveness lies your salvation. Illusions about yourself and the world are one. So whatever we mistakenly believe about the world is the same process as what we mistakenly believe about ourselves. And it's in that where our illusions are, and they're one and the same. This is why all forgiveness is a gift to yourself. It's not the other person that you're forgiving. They get let off the hook, so to speak, is ancillary. The actual act of me forgiving is for me, not for them. There was something mentioned a moment ago that made me think about this idea of the prisoner. Like if I'm holding Jim prisoner to my grievance, and now he's the source of my unforgiveness. He's the source of me not being able to be at peace with myself because I have this grievance in place with him. And that grievance is like just a grit in there. It's the grit in my soul. It's keeping me from experiencing peace. I want to experience peace, then I have to forgive Jim. I don't know about that. What Jim did, man, that was just like too harsh for words. And I don't know that I can forgive this. I need to make sure he stays right there in his little jail cell that I've built for him and locked him up in. Well, guess what? If I'm keeping Jim prisoner to my grievance, I'm the sheriff, I'm the jailer, which means I have to stay right there and make sure Jim doesn't get out of his cell. He's held within that prison cell of my own grievance. So I can watch him 24/7. He can't have any happiness. Nothing good can happen to him because this thing is like, my grievance. It prevents him from doing it. Not really in reality, but in my mind, I think that I'm holding him from his good. So ultimately, we get to the place of forgiveness in the construct of A Course in Miracles. We ultimately get to a place where forgiveness is, it never happened. What I think Jim did to me, the way I see it, is just my perception. It's not the way it actually happened in reality. That's a big step. So ultimately, forgiveness is not, this is not true forgiveness, but we've all practiced this. Okay, Jim, this thing you did, way beyond the pale, Jim. But I'm going to be the bigger person here.
Yes.
And I'm going to forgive you. Okay. I'm going to forgive you because I'm the bigger person here. Doesn't change what you did. Right. It's still heinous what you did to me. That's not forgiveness. Because I'm still holding on to the judgment that what he did was out of bounds. So I've still got a condition on my forgiveness. I'm still making real what Jim did to me, even though I'm going to move on. Okay. True forgiveness is this. It never happened. Never happened. So I'm just going to walk over to the jail cell that I built for Jim. I'm going to unlock the door, open the door, say, Jim, I'm forgiving the whole thing. I'm heading out. I'm going to go do something else. You can let yourself out whenever you're ready. Here's the key. The door's open. You can do what you wish at this point in time. I'm moving on. I'm moving forward. That's true forgiveness, is that it didn't happen. It at least didn't happen the way that I think that it happened, right? That I built my own little story about what he did and what it prevented me from, or how out of bounds he was, or whatever the case would be. It didn't happen. Forgiveness corrects all of that. One of the ideas in A Course in Miracles that is asked of me as the student is that in practicing this forgiveness at this level of it didn't happen, it doesn't mean that whatever the experience was, didn't, like the details of the experience didn't happen. It was my judgment on the experience. That's the variable. That's when I'm releasing and letting go. The facts are the facts. But if I take my charge off of it, I take my judgment off of it, and I get to that place of neutrality, then I'm opened up at that point in time to the forgiveness to come through me. A Course in Miracles would call forgiveness in effect a miracle. That's one of the ideas behind A Course in Miracles. But it's not the act of forgiveness is an actual act and an expression of love. But the forgiveness is not the miracle. The love that inspires the miracle is the true miracle. Right? So love is ultimately in play, right? And in the language of A Course in Miracles, we're really choosing between love and fear all the time, all day long, the rest of our lives. Anybody in here think they've got all their forgiveness work in a nice tiny little file? You got everything forgiven? That's good.
I do have a list.
Do you have a list? That's good. Keep a list. Make sure. But forgiving one thing, whatever it is, like if you could imagine whatever the top level grievance you may be holding in your life, the one that you think is the hardest one to forgive, that it's no different than forgiving the person that cut you off in traffic. The act of forgiveness is no different than forgiving the person in traffic or forgiving someone or something in your life for the most egregious thing that you could think of. It's the same act. How do you forgive? How do you forgive? Right. Well, that's an aspect of it. That's part of the dynamics of it that would describe that process. But the actual act of forgiving is like one of the things, of Course in Miracles will teach you is that, look, you don't need to understand forgiveness. You don't need to understand how it does its work. You don't need to understand how it corrects things and puts things right. You don't need to understand any of that. What you do have to do is to be willing to forgive. That's all. Just I put my willingness on the table. I'm willing to forgive this circumstance with Jim. I'm just willing. I don't know how the Holy Spirit's going to come in and correct things. I don't know how it's going to restore my peace. I don't know how it's going to make my life better, how it's going to make Jim's life better, which is something that I was kind of holding out. I didn't want Jim's life to get any better. My grievance and everything, but I have to release that too, that Jim's good can come to him. That's true forgiveness. I've neutralized the story. I've neutralized the grievance, and I've replaced it with what we call forgiveness, but it's actually an expression of love. That the forgiveness is the consequence of seeing Jim as a child of God, just like me, right? And get to that place where we're on equal terms, that I'm not holding him prisoner to my grievance anymore. I see him as a child of God. I'm a child of God. And in that reciprocity, I'm unwilling any longer to hold Jim as a child of God prisoner to my grievance. And so I release him. But I'm in effect releasing myself. That the actual reward of my forgiveness is for me, not for Jim. Because quite frankly, Jim could be oblivious to the fact that I'm holding him prisoner to grievance. I might not have ever said anything to him. He used to be going along his life, not even aware that I've got a grievance. One of the things that I do believe is this, and of Course in Miracles talks about this, is that everything is communicated all the time. Everything is communicated all the time. So even if I didn't give voice to my grievance with Jim, even if I didn't let him know that I'm holding him in unforgiveness, but ultimately it's communicated through my thoughts. Right? And so, of Course in Miracles would have it that in that moment, whenever I achieve that space where I become willing to forgive Jim, that even if I haven't given voice to whatever the grievance is, and even if Jim's not even aware he's actually living in a prison cell, that I've constructed for him, that in that silence of that willingness to forgive, the forgiveness corrects things across time. Jim will be going through his day, unaware that I'm over here working on forgiveness for him, right? But in that moment, when I release that charge that I had that was connecting me to him in that grievance, it goes away. And Jim might be out there doing his daily routines and everything, and in the middle of his day, and all of a sudden he gets a feeling of peace, and he won't necessarily know where it comes from. He won't know that I've worked on my forgiveness and I've released that charge that was connecting us. And he'll have a momentary experience of peace, and he'll just, wow, yeah, I'm feeling good, but he won't know the reason. Because the Holy Spirit will correct that across time. And it didn't happen. What I thought happened didn't happen. It certainly didn't happen the way I thought it happened. So what's the purpose of that forgiveness? The purpose of the forgiveness is to get me into a space where I can prepare myself to experience peace. The Course in Miracles says that the purpose of the Course is not to teach the meaning of love. Not teach the meaning of love, because that can't be taught. I can't tell you what love means. I can't teach you what love means, right? But the practice of the principles in A Course in Miracles helps me to remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, right? I've heard the parable of the log in the eye and the splinter in the eye, same kind of thing. Remove the log from your eye so that you can see more clearly, to remove the speck in your brother's eye, right? Jim, here's this thing that's imperfect about you. Oh, wait, let me get this log out of my own eye, right? So I can say, oh, wow, what beautiful, Jim, actually, you're beautiful. It's like, there's not really anything wrong with you, because I've now corrected my vision. I've removed that block that prohibits me from seeing him as a child of God. And it's the same thing. So really the art of forgiveness, okay, the art of forgiveness is just found and practiced and expressed in our simple desire to be willing to forgive. Because if I'm unwilling to forgive, guess what I am willing to do? I'm willing to hold on to the grievance. Either way, my will's in play. I'm making a decision to hold him to my grievance. That's my willingness to hold him prisoner. And also my willingness to sacrifice my peace as I'm holding him prisoner. Because I can't hold him prisoner and experience peace. That's really all of it in a nutshell. Since all of us in this room have already kind of owned the fact that we probably have some forgiveness work to do, I kind of am of the belief that if we're still, alive and breathing in this on this planet, that there are still opportunities for us to forgive, and that even if you came in here this morning and all your forgiveness work was done in a nice tidy little pile and you on your game. Right. After we leave here, the day will bring more opportunities for you to practice that and prove that that's true. The world is constantly tempting us to lose our peace. And just turn on the news. Almost every article is a temptation for you to lose your peace, to choose a side, to hold some other side in our collective grievance, right? And we're going back and forth all day long. The world, and if you think about this just straight on, you'll know that it's true in your own experience. The world has never been at peace. The external world has never been at peace. All right, one of the things that Jesus taught was there will always be wars and rumors of wars. Always. And that's true. Now, look back on my experience. That's pretty much true. Are there wars going on in the world right now?
Yeah.
Are there rumors of wars going on in the world right now?
Yep.
That's always been true. The world has never been at peace, and it never will be at peace. But that doesn't mean that I can't be at peace, that I can't experience peace no matter what the world's going on. And that's how we get into that space of practicing forgiveness to the point of mastery. How much do you want peace? Like for me, peace is not only my favorite word, it's the condition that I want behind every choice. Doesn't really matter if I'm going to see the Astros baseball game today. I'm going to the Astros baseball game because I'll feel good and I'll feel at peace being at the Astros baseball game, even if they lose. Even if they lose, I can go home and be disappointed that they lost, but I still had a great experience. I'm choosing that. Same thing with a book I'm reading, or a record I'm listening to, or a relationship that I'm in. We're choosing everything, not because of the thing itself, but because of the experience that we believe we'll have if we have the thing. And the experience that we believe we'll have if we have the thing is peace on the other side. If you think about this in your own life, just kind of like look at what's going on, look at what you're choosing, look at what you've chosen, and just think past it, just a little bit past the surface of the thing itself, the relationship, the amount of money in the bank, the right job, the right house, whatever it is. And what we actually want is not necessarily the house. We want the feeling that we're going to have if we have the house. And one of the feelings that we think we'll have is peace. It's always peace that we're choosing, whether we see it or not. And if I can see that peace is really my end game, it's my goal, like in all these situations. Now I'm just looking at situations going like, is this bringing me more peace? And actually, let me correct that. You can't have more peace. You either have peace or you don't. It's not a matter of degree. You're either at peace or you're not. What you can do is have peace more of the time. You can't be more at peace, but you can have peace more of the time. Y'all probably heard me. I've already talked about baseball at least once in this thing. But baseball is a useful metaphor for me because we're in the last half of the season right now, headed towards the final part of the season, and then the playoffs and the World Series, and somebody's going to wind up being champion, and then they're going to have some time off, 3 or 4 months to heal or whatever, spend time with their families, which they don't get to do a lot during baseball season. And then spring training will start. And then in spring training, these highly trained professionals who get paid lots of money to play baseball, they're going to go back to spring training. And guess what they're going to be doing when they get back to spring training? Practicing, 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 practicing the fundamentals until they no longer have to think about them consciously. A ball is hit in your direction and your automatic response is just start fielding. I'm staggered sometimes at just like watching how many hard hit ground balls are fielded really cleanly by these people in the infield, throw across the infield and execute a play perfectly. They're not thinking, oh, a ball's coming in my direction. I better get in front of it. I better catch it. I better throw fast enough. They don't think about any of that. They're just on automatic response because they've been practicing the fundamentals until they just do them automatically. And that's the same way we need to be with forgiveness. It may take conscious practice on our part, like to realize the goal. What do I want in this situation? I want peace. I want to be at peace about this circumstance, this relationship, the lack of funds in my bank account, my disease, if I've got a health condition, whatever the case may be, whatever it is that is disturbing my peace, that I want to neutralize that and convert it, and put myself in a position to experience peace. And you'll find time and time and time again, almost without exception, that there's a grievance that we have in place, some kind of judgment, some kind of thing that's happened in the past that's preventing us from seeing this person as a child of God too. Like, anybody remember reading, I think it was in Conversations with God back in the 90s, the first book, and there's a portion of the dialogue that's going on in there. And they're talking about people like Hitler and things like that, the people that we would consider the boogeyman, just the ones that are beyond redemption. And the idea is that if God's love is unconditional, then even though there's an opportunity for even those that we judge as being completely evil to be redeemed. And that may challenge us in our limited human experience and everything. But if we get above it and we get to the place of unconditional love, if God's love is unconditional, that means without condition. You don't have to do anything to earn God's love. God's love is just true. Now, if I don't accept that, right, if I don't receive that, allow myself to receive it, and that's a whole nother talk about how we prevent ourselves from receiving God's love. And it can come in many, many forms. It's not just from the divine, it can come through each one of us. We can all be agents and channels for that expression of God's love if we're willing. Like I said a moment ago, willingness is the key here, that I don't have to know how to forgive. I don't need to recite all what happened and forgive each little thing. Well, you did this, Jim, and you did that, and you did this, and you did that, and then I did this, and you refused to respond, and you didn't return my email when I tried to, like we don't have to go down and go down the list and forgive each and every infraction that we've imagined has happened. We get to that holistic place of just, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of not being at peace. And I can't change Jim, and I can't change what happened, right? But I can change my mind about what happened. And that's the difference, is that I change my mind about what happened, and I can see it from a different light. I can see it through the lens of love, for example. Anybody read or study Dr. David Hawkins along the way? Okay, so and just real quickly, he among other things in his work, he calibrated what he calls the map of human consciousness. It's this vertical scale from 0 to 1,000. Okay, and at the lowest point, at 0 to 20, is the energy of shame. It's the energy of shame. That's the lowest energy that we can manifest. And if you go back and just like look at the Bible, just the fall of Adam and Eve in the garden, right? Hey, you can do whatever you want. Just don't eat that fruit right over there on the tree right over there. The rest of the garden's yours. Just don't do that. And guess what they did?
Yeah.
They did that, right? And then when they did that, they became aware that they had done something they weren't supposed to do. That's that sin, so to speak, that error. They did it. And then God comes back through the Garden of Eden. They're, hey, Adam, Eve, where are y'all? What's going on? It's God. And and then what the Bible says is they became aware of their nakedness, and they attempted to cover their nakedness with the fig leaf. That's shame. That, metaphysically speaking, that act of attempting to hide behind the fig leaf was an act of shame. That's that lowest form of energy that we can manifest, according to Dr. Hawkins. And the scale goes up from there, and it goes through things like fear and apathy and pride, anger, all of these things. But anger is actually a higher power than shame. Pride is higher than anger, right? But pride calibrates on his scale from 175 to 200 on this scale of 0 to 1,000. That threshold at 200, right there at 200, that's where we move from fear into love. We move from force into true power. And collectively, he's calibrated that the world, collectively, in our collective consciousness, that we are resonating at around 214, give or take, on that scale. That means that collectively, we're vibrating at a level of courage. Collectively, we are in the realm of demonstrating power versus force. But the vast majority of the population is still, their main calibration is below that level of 200. Anytime that I'm experiencing pride, anytime that I feel shame, like I can go to shame right now if I want to, right? God's not going to stop me from feeling shame. But when I do, I dim my light. I'm now vibrating in that experience down around 200. I mean, down around 20. But I'm also capable of unconditional love. Like I have that in my tool belt. If I demonstrate unconditional love, now I'm resonating at 500 on this scale. So we're at courage collectively at 200. The next scale up is 250. And the quality that we're demonstrating at the level of 250 is neutrality. Neutrality. And neutrality is characterized by me not taking rigid positions of anything. It's like the Eastern way of being, where it's non-resistant, be like water, be neutral. People think that neutrality is a passive energy. It's not. It's a quite powerful, active energy, because it's a conscious decision for me to be non-resistant, to be open to whatever is. Above neutrality, the next phase up is willingness. That willingness calibrates at about 300 on this scale. It's 100 degrees above courage, the willingness. And that's why A Course in Miracles teaches that you don't need to know how to forgive. You don't need to know how forgiveness does its work, how it corrects everything, makes everything better. You just have to be willing to forgive. You have to be willing to allow love to be expressed through you as a child of God. That's all. Willingness. In fact, the Course in Miracles calls it your little willingness. Just put your little willingness on the table. In fact, it encourages you. It says, look, you don't need to understand any of this. You don't need to intellectually understand it. You don't need to be persuaded. You don't need to be convinced of it. What you do need to do is be willing to practice what you're being asked to do. And that if you're willing to practice it and do these things, your very own direct experience will prove to you the power that's available to you. Jim won't have to come over and persuade me, to be willing to forgive. That if I am willing to forgive, my own experience will prove it. Jim won't have to persuade me. That's powerful, because I can do that. I can put my willingness on the table. Why would I do that? Because I want to experience peace more of the time in my life. Anybody ever had a dark night of the soul? Yeah. You have those moments where you don't know why what's happening to you is happening to you. You imagine that it's going to be this way for the rest of your life, that I'm never going to laugh again. I'm never going to love again. I'm never going to enjoy a baseball game again. Right? It's just a dark night of the soul. And the way through that dark night of the soul is just to be willing to accept it, willing to believe that the light will come again. You know, the darkest hour is always before the dawn. All these kinds of things are signposts and symbols for us to learn from. If you're in a dark night of the soul and it's really, really dark, guess what? The light's just around the corner. The light's just around the corner. And if I can be willing to suspend my judgment, if I can be willing to suspend my grieving, you know, and just put that on pause for a little bit, then the light will have an opportunity to come in. So the art of forgiveness, practicing forgiveness, practice. Y'all heard that one, right? How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Practice.
That's right. Same thing. How do you get to peace? Practice forgiveness. You practice forgiveness. By the way, on Dr. Hawkins' scale, just to continue that out, from willingness, the next level up is acceptance. Beyond that is reason. Reason is a very powerful creative energy. However, reason caps out at 499 on the scale, and then love takes over. The things that are above love are things like compassion, joy, prosperity, peace, all of those things that are above love. They're not a la carte items. You don't say, I'll have a little bit of peace. Okay, yeah, I'll take that. Do that. You can't just choose peace. What you do is you love unconditionally, and peace is the consequence and the effect. So you're not actually choosing peace, you're choosing to love unconditionally. And then we ascend into those higher energies: joy, compassion, empathy, understanding, peace. All of those kinds of things come above that as a result of choosing love. So can we choose love? You have. You wouldn't even be in this room if you weren't experienced already at choosing love in your life. Unless you're actually in the dark night of the soul experience. And last night while you were in that, you heard a voice say, hey, go to Unity Church in the morning. Right? But for the most part, by the time we come here and we're practicing a spiritual practice in our life, we have tangible experience at expressing love. In fact, we may have more experience at expressing love than we do at receiving love. That's a whole nother talk.
Yeah.
Like
That's a serious.
receiving love. That's a whole other thing. But what would prevent me from receiving love would be if I was stuck down in those lower regions that Dr. Hawkins calls force, where I'd be feeling shame or guilt, something that I had not yet forgiven. Those are the things that are prohibiting me from receiving and feeling that experience of love. So it's still work. So whatever you're calibrated at, let's just say everybody in this room is calibrated at the energy of courage. Okay, that we're all collectively, we're all part of that consciousness that's above 200. We're holding up our corner of the blanket, you know, and we're demonstrating courage. By the way, the root word of courage, you know, the etymological thing, is a word that means heart. Right? So courage is effectively heart. And of course, heart symbolically we link with love, right? Power of love, so it's the same thing. So we're all expressing courage as a mean average of all of the energies that we're capable of expressing. Does that mean that I'm expressing courage at all times? No, it doesn't. I probably still have some residual guilt, shame, might get angry in traffic, which is one of my things, you know, because I feel out of control sometimes if I'm in traffic. Fortunately, I'm not in traffic very, very often anymore because I work at home, so I don't have to confront that. But that actual act of traffic, when I first started doing my work, that was one place where I would just lose my cookies. Be in traffic, needing to be somewhere, feeling restricted, feeling not in control. Somebody cuts you off and then you're just losing it. And nobody's even aware that you're losing it. You're in your car by yourself. You're the only witness to you losing it, right? So over the course of time, one of the ways that I would gauge my progress was how well I was doing in traffic. My mother used to say, you know, if you'd say something, you know, derogatory or whatever, she'd go, cancel. You know, like, claim that back, bring that back, right? So in traffic nowadays, if I find myself having that little flare where just somebody cuts me off and I'm, you know, I remember my mother saying, cancel. And so now what I do when somebody cuts me off in traffic is I go, hey, Jim, I hope you get to where you're going very safely. I know you're in a hurry right now and you're putting the rest of these people in here in danger. Okay, but we hope that you get where you're going safely. Because if he gets going where he's going safely, then everybody else that's potentially in peril at that point in time does so as well. So instead of raging at the person who cut me off in traffic, I've learned to convert it to a prayer. Now, doesn't make me a better person for doing that. But what it does do is it keeps the conditions for me to continue experiencing peace in place. Because now I've not picked up a new grievance to throw into the mix. So I just hold my intention to pray safety for everybody, including the person that cut me off in traffic, Jim in this case. That
He
just
would
and
never.
pray peace for him, pray peace for me, and be in that space. Because it's really easy for us to pick up grievances when we don't really realize we're doing it. That's why it's necessary that the gauge that we can use for ourselves is, are you experiencing peace right now or not? If you're experiencing peace, then you're choosing correctly. You're choosing in the right direction. You're choosing from love. If you're at peace. And if you're not at peace, as A Course in Miracles says, you've chosen wrongly. If I'm not at peace for any reason whatsoever, I've just simply chosen wrongly. And in A Course in Miracles, which is about just shy of 700 pages of text, not counting the lessons, just the text, nearly 700 pages of text, it ultimately boils down to 2 words. Choose again. Choose again. If I'm not at peace for any reason, I've chosen wrongly. If I wish to be at peace, choose again. Choose again. You're always recalibrating back to that. What are my choices? What am I choosing? What am I choosing between, among? Ultimately, in the Course in Miracles language, I'm choosing between love and fear. That's really all I'm choosing between, period. Love or fear. And y'all probably heard me say this before. This is a useful way of looking at things, that it's estimated that each one of us thinks somewhere between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day, like running through the activity of our thinking mind. Unity's third principle is that we're co-creating this experience by the activity of our thoughts and our feelings. We're in charge of that, right? But on a daily basis, let's say we're thinking 60,000 thoughts a day, 80% of those thoughts, so let's say 48,000 of those 60,000 thoughts are fear-based. They're fear-based thoughts. 80% of those fear-based thoughts, so let's say 36,000, are redundant, which means we're thinking the same thing over and over and over. If we have a grievance in place, something dramatic going on in our lives, when we're obsessing over that, we're thinking the same thing over and over and over. So 60,000 thoughts a day, 80% are fear-based or negative thinking, judgments, etc. Good news is 12,000 of those thoughts are calibrating in the direction of love. And because the power of love is exponentially greater than the force of fear, that choice of love can keep things in kind of a state of balance, so to speak. We may not even be aware that we're thinking that many negative or fear-based thoughts. And it doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, I'm thinking, I'm afraid to, what if I run out in traffic and get hit by a car? It's not that kind of thing. We can think fear-based thoughts. My daughter's in Florida right now, you know, and flew there. As soon as she got on the plane the other night, a part of my consciousness was going, please let her get there. You know, please let the plane be safe. Please let her have a safe. So like part of my tracking is still praying safety for her. And even though I'm attempting to affirmatively pray safety and maintain my peace, even underneath that request for safety is that potential for danger. Right? It's right there. It's always right there. And so we're calibrating, we're using the power of love to help give us buoyancy and resilience to stay above that fray. That if I find myself thinking that fear-based thought, there I did it again. In the words of the great sage Britney Spears, oops, I did it again. I did it again. It's that way, and you will do it again. It's not a cause for judgment or shame. It's just a Oh, I did it again. There I did it again. Despite my best efforts, despite my intentions of choosing love, despite my practice and experience of choosing love, I did it again. And what do? Choose again. Bingo. Number one answer. The only correct answer, by the way. Choose again. And then I recalibrate back to it. So I recognize that I've chosen fear. I recognize that I've chosen judgment. And then I forgive that. Like, okay, did it again. Isn't that funny? Yeah, it's funny. You thought you were doing good. And then you choose again and you recalibrate back to love. That practice, being willing to practice forgiveness. Remember, I don't have to know how forgiveness does its work. I don't have to know how everything's going to work out. I just have to be willing to. And then I'm willing to forgive. Actually, what I'm willing to do is love. I'm willing to love unconditionally with neutrality. That's power. That's true power. It's estimated that one person resonating and vibrating at the energy of unconditional love, which is just 500 on his scale from 0 to 1,000. After you get above 700, it's just pure enlightenment. You know, there's no words for it. It becomes ineffable at a certain point. You're just in a state of pure enlightenment. But at that level of 500, as I'm choosing that love, choosing that, then all the good that I can experience, all the miracles that I will experience are a result of choosing love. And so the art of forgiveness is actually the practice of unconditional love when you get right down to it. Just they're one and the same. Love is the cause. Forgiveness is the effect and consequence. Love is the cause. Peace is the effect and consequence. Right? So if I'm not at peace, because I've chosen to not be at peace, not because of what somebody did or said or didn't do or didn't say that I was expecting them to say. It's up to me. Me be at peace. No one can make me be at peace. Right? I can't make Teresa be at peace. She can't make me be at peace.
And
what I can do or what she can do is demonstrate and model the peace that they're experiencing by being willing to be an emissary of love, by willing to be an agent of forgiveness and so forth, and standing in that space. God will send you opportunities. You know, God will send you opportunities. If you're a willing servant, you know, willing to share what you're experiencing and share it with others and everything, God will put you into positions to do that because it's helpful. It's helpful. One of the things that A Course in Miracles talks about that I've always loved is that the value in anything, the value of anything is in its usefulness as a learning device. It's in its usefulness as a learning device. So, okay, well, what's the value of a grievance? What's the value of judgment? What's the value of unforgiveness? Oh, it's there in place as a potential learning device for me. That if I'm willing to forgive the grievance that I'm holding Jim prisoner to, if I'm willing to do that, then it's useful because what I will learn in the process is that as I forgive him, I experience peace. Nothing bad happened to me. Nothing bad even happened to Jim. I let him go. He's having a good life now. He was having a good life before, even when I had him as a prisoner to my grievance because he was unaware of my grievance, right? But I release him to be the child of God that he is, and I release myself as well. That practice is the art. And that's what it gets down to. Just like baseball, practice, 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 just like Carnegie Hall, practice, practice, practice. That's how we become masters. So with that, let's shift gears here and let's take that. Just invite you to gently close your outer eyes. We take this message of love and forgiveness deeper into our own indwelling soul. As we breathe in that spirit of love, we release on the exhale any fear, any nervousness or grievances that are blocking our awareness to love's presence, that are prohibiting our experience of peace. Peace is what we want. peace is what we have, that indwelling peace that goes beyond our understanding, beyond our human understanding. And we know that that indwelling Christ presence, that indwelling spirit is present with us. So we attend to that presence. We set our intention on the connection with that indwelling presence, that same one indwelling master teacher that even Jesus had. You and I each have that master teacher within us. In unity, we take time in the silence to connect with that indwelling power, that indwelling presence. We create that opening, that receptivity in our hearts, in our minds, in our spirits, to be taught, to be led, to be encouraged by that indwelling presence. So whatever is going on for us, if we have an actual active unforgiveness going on in our lives, we call that to mind right now. If we don't have an active unforgiveness, we just bring to mind an experience where we have forgiven in the past. We bring that into the silence. We bring that to the altar. We bring that to the master teacher. We open our hearts and minds to receive guidance, to receive truth, to receive wisdom. And we ask, what is mine to do today? What can I do today to remove any block to my own awareness, to love's presence? What can I do today to create the conditions for the experience of peace? And we bring this to the altar and we listen in the silence. As we gently bring our attention back into this space, I encourage you to keep your eyes closed for just a few moments more. Just be with that divine connection with your own indwelling teacher. It's always with you wherever you are in whatever circumstance. Always available to you to connect with, to receive from that indwelling teacher, that indwelling master Christ presence will always guide us with love. Will always encourage us to aspire to the higher energies, to achieve joy, empathy, compassion, forgiveness, peace, available to us at all times, in all circumstances. Ours is to connect with that and become willing to forgive, to become willing to practice forgiveness, which is the same as saying willing to practice, being a channel of love, an expression of God's unconditional love. It works through us. It's the only way it can work, is through us. And so we bring our willingness to the table today and in the coming days, and we look for opportunities to forgive so that we can remove those blocks to the awareness of our own indwelling presence of love. For the power of love, for the strategy of forgiveness, and for the willingness to practice, we are ever so grateful. And so we say, thank you, living, loving Spirit. We pray all of this and more in the name and the nature of Jesus, the indwelling Christ. And so it is, and so we allow it to be. Amen. So is it offering time?
Yeah, it's time to bless, to say our prayer. Okay, so we're going to gather our gifts now for the offering. And we're going to together bless our offering. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, boundless all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let this begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. The light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen.